Hey y'all, it's Amanda and this is my Texas Zone 8 garden. And today I wanted to kind of address a lot of questions people had about starting seeds, because I think that we watch YouTube and we see a ton of wonderful gardeners starting a bunch of seeds, and then maybe in a few months we see them plant the seeds outside. I wanted to talk about what happens between the planting of the seeds, the starting of the seeds, and when you're actually moving them outside to get them started. So today we're going to be going over seedling maintenance tips, and I'm going to be giving you an update on all the seedlings that I've been growing. Okay, so I think that's something that I have a hard time finding information about on YouTube or social media is what happens in the middle, right? We sowed all these seeds, and then you see when they start planting out, but you don't see a lot of what's going on in the middle. So what I wanted to talk to you about is basically some basic like maintenance and care tips for your seedlings. Now I've got a ton of seedlings going. I've got everything from like just beginning to sprout to maybe within 2 weeks of potting up to these are my petunias that are just killing it. They're looking really, really good. So we're going to talk about a lot of different aspects from the very beginning of a seedling all the way through. So let's just start from you've sowed the seed, you've got a humidity dome on, you've provided whatever heat mat or whatever it all needs, and you have a seedling and it sprouts. What do you do next? One of the big things to do, once more than 50% of your seedlings have sprouted in your container, you can wait till further along, like 60, 75 if you want. Once those have sprouted, you want to take the dome off the seedlings. And if your seedlings are in a stable environment where it's fairly warm and consistent, like inside of a house, you want to remove them from a heat mat. Now, the reason we want to do these things, removing from a heat mat, is a lot of seedlings need the heat to go ahead and germinate, but they don't need a lot of consistent heat to continue to grow. And if you're somebody who is doing growing inside, like what I am, my house is typically between the 68 to 72 degree range, so that works really well. If you're somebody who is growing in a garage or a basement or something like that, you are a whole different ball game. You are going to have to judge for yourself how cold it gets in your garage and in your basement, and you will have to heat your seedlings accordingly. Once they've sprouted, you don't necessarily have to heat them with the heating mat. You can heat them with a general like heater in the area or like a room heater, something along those lines if you would prefer to instead. The reason that we don't leave seedlings on a heating mat forever and ever is because a lot of times it warms up too much. It's too hot for the seedlings, and it's going to push them to grow quicker, faster, or grow faster, which sounds like it would be a good thing, but not necessarily, because it can cause them to grow too long, too quick. It can cause them to be going through water too quickly. It can force them to grow more foliage and less roots. There's a lot of different things leaving them on the heat mat the whole time can cause. And we don't leave the humidity dome on the whole time, because that's how we build up algae and mold, and we lead to different diseases like dampening off. So your seedlings have germinated. Now we've removed the heating mat and the humidity dome. What do we do next? Well, there's a few things that we need. We need to make sure that we have really great air circulation. And what do I mean by that? I mean putting in an oscillating fan so that your seedlings get a little bit of breeze. I have a ceiling fan in here that whenever I'm not filming, I turn it on high in this room, and it creates a breeze throughout the whole room, which works really great. This is a really small room, so that works really well for me. But I highly suggest something like an oscillating fan. Now, once you get the oscillating fan going, you don't want it right up against your seedlings. You want to have it back, and you just want to see a little bit of movement with your seedlings. And that helps create really great air circulation and helps us fight off a lot of diseases that could happen to your seedlings. The next thing we need is light. Light is super important. Seedlings need minimum 12 to 14 hours of light per day. And right now it's in the depths of the winter. Sunlight isn't enough. There's not enough hours of sunlight a day. So we use artificial light. So I've got a couple of different sources. I've got some of my LED lighting here, and then I've got some old school like shop lights that I use as well. And those work great. I have all of mine on a timer, and they come on at like, I think 6 o'clock in the morning, and then they go off at 10. So I believe that's right about 16 hours of light is what mine are getting, and which works great. I wouldn't suggest like doing like constantly, give them a little bit of a break. They need a moment to sleep as well, but a minimum 12 to 14 hours of light. Now, one of the important things about light is the proximity of the seedlings to the light. And right behind me is a really good example, because you guys can see that I've got this one shorter shelf right here. And I've got my seedlings and they're only a couple of inches from the light, which is really good because I've got the light close enough that the seedlings are not reaching for the light. And when the seedlings begin reaching for the light, they become very, very leggy, and it's almost impossible to bring them back from the brink at that point. You can even see on this shelf right here where I'm further away, I've put some lifts underneath here to get the seedlings closer to the light, because that's going to be better for the seedlings in the long run. So you definitely need to think about that proximity to light. As these seedlings get bigger, right, I can move them further away from the light. I can transfer them up here or whatever I need to do once they're getting up to where they're touching the light. Another important maintenance tip for caring for your seedlings is thinning seedlings. And I know that's not something that a lot of people enjoy. It annoys me to death. I always overseed. Yet when they sprout, I feel terrible thinning out the seedlings. Here's the deal with thinning out the seedlings. You have a small little cell that these seedlings are in. You do not want them battling one another for the nutrients, for the space, for the water. What you want to do is eliminate it to just one strong, beautiful seedling and allow that guy the absolute best chance where he can do it all on his own, have all the water supply he needs, have all the nutrients, have all the space, instead of battling with additional seedlings. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can thin seedlings. You can certainly just take a pair of scissors and just trim off a little seedling, no problem. That's really, really easy. You just trim it at the base. I highly suggest not pulling on a seedling, because when you pull on the seedling, you're disturbing the roots of the other seedling beside it. Then finally, a lot of people let their seedlings grow on a little bit. They take the whole cell out and then they kind of pull apart the earth and the roots to create two seedlings. And you can do that as well and then plant those up or pot those up into the next biggest container. Now, a lot of people are like, but when's the best time to thin seedlings? Do I do it right after they sprouted? No, my usual suggestion is to allow the seedlings to develop a first couple of leaves, maybe 1 or 2 sets of leaves. After that point, you're going to be able to kind of tell which seedling looks stronger and better. And that's the seedling you want to use, and the other seedling you want to cut out or separate. Okay, so now our seedlings have sprouted. We've taken the heat dome and the heating mats off. We've made sure they have great air circulation and wonderful light where they're close to the proximity of light. We've also made sure that we have thinned out our seedlings and that they are good to go and they're not battling other seedlings to grow. So what next? Well, seedlings, when you're utilizing something like seed starting mix or even just some basic potting soil, there's not a lot of nutrients right in the beginning that the seedlings need within the first, couple of weeks of their life. I would even say more 5 to 7 days of the beginning of their life. After that, you do need to start hitting them with some liquid fertilizer. And when I say liquid fertilizer, I mean something like Alaskan fish emulsion. Let me show you what I use. I use Alaskan fish fertilizer emulsion. Smells terrible, but it works really well because I just put a glop of it in a container and add water and dilute it out. And then at that point, I feed all of my seedlings with this, and I bottom water all the seedlings with this. The seedlings cannot go weeks and weeks and weeks without some kind of fertilizer. So if you're kind of looking at your seedlings not really going, they're not, they're kind of stunted in growth, it might be that they actually need a fertilizer. And that's something to consider, especially if you're using seed starting soil, like the specific mix for that has 0 nutrients in it whatsoever. So you are absolutely going to have to supplement with a liquid fertilizer. So while we're on the topic of fertilizing, and I was talking about watering them with the fertilizer, let's talk about watering. So seedlings need to be checked every day. You really need to be checking them every day, and you need to be making sure that they're well watered and still moist. We do not want our seedlings to dry out. Most seedlings cannot handle that, with the exception of something like a lisianthus. My lisianthus likes to dry out maybe a little bit of a day and then rewater it. But most seedlings are not like that. They don't want to dry out at all. So when I'm watering, I have most of my seedlings in some type of reservoir tray, just like this. And I just pour my water into the base of the tray. I always try to water from the bottom, so bottom watering. Pour it into the tray and allow the seedlings the opportunity to suck up the water that they do need. You do not want to leave tons of standing water in these trays. Pretty much you should just allow them a few hours to suck up the water and then come and drain the water out. Now I say that, but I'm terrible about remembering that. So a lot of times I do allow mine to sit in maybe half an inch of water and then it evaporates over a day or something like that. That's me. That doesn't mean you need to do that too. And I will say that doesn't always work for me on that. Sometimes I lose seedlings because I have them too wet. Okay, so now our seedlings are fertilized and well watered. So what do we do next when they start getting bigger? At that point in time, you're really looking at to transition them or pot them up to the next size of containers. A lot of people ask, how do I know when the time is to move the seedlings to a bigger container? It's kind of a little bit of a guessing game in my opinion. I like to make sure my seedlings have a well-established root system before I move them to a larger container. A good rule of thumb is if your seedling gets maybe, if this is the height of, your seedling cell, your seed cell right here, and your seedling gets a couple of 2 times larger than that, it's definitely time to move it over. I like to wait until I can see the roots in here, whether it's on the slots on these Vigo ones or whether it's in something like these other containers that you can see because they're clear. I like to check and see how big the root system looks and go from there. And if I'm really able to see those roots, then that's the time it tells me I need to pot them up. Traditionally, when I'm potting them up, I did a whole series on my petunia seedlings. I repurpose all the plastic containers that I get from nurseries for all my annuals and stuff. And so I repurpose them and I put them into these larger containers. Typically, if you're going to do that, you're going to want to use a general potting mix at that point in time. You can go ahead and mix in something like a fertilizer, like a granule fertilizer, slow release fertilizer, or you can mix in compost at that time. I just do potting soil and then I add my fertilizer with my Alaskan fish emulsion, and that works great for me because, look at these petunias. They are absolutely gorgeous. Okay, so you've potted them up into the next container. They're continuing to grow on, but you're not ready to plant them outside. And they start making flowers. Look at this right here. I don't want my plants to start producing flowers, whether they're vegetables, whether it's annual flowers, perennial flowers, anything like that. Because when they're producing flowers, they are putting focus on making flowers, not building a root system. And I want them to build a strong root system. So whenever I see that they have begun to create flowers, I typically will come in and cut them off. This also allows me to do a little bit of pruning that will encourage branching, especially for something like a petunia. We really want it to branch out. You don't want it to just grow straight up and down. Straight up and down is not what we want. We want petunias to spread out beautifully. So I'm just going in right now. I'm cutting above a set of 2 leaves and I'm just trimming out all of my flowers, buds, anything like that. And I know it's exciting. I'm not going to lie, I'm super excited to see these flowers. I can't wait. This is really awesome. But the reality of the situation is I'm not ready for it to be spending all this time on flowers. I want it to spend another good month getting bigger and better root systems, and then I want it to start budding up, because in about another month or so, I would say actually towards the end of February, I will be getting prepared to start transplanting some of these outside. Transplanting them outside, but what I really mean is putting them in a greenhouse outside to get full on sunlight. And at that point in time, I'm all up for them beginning to flower. So you've seen me kind of go in. I do have to check on these petunias probably every 2 to 3 days as they are continuing to grow quite a bit. I'm very happy with them. I'm actually going to slow down the fertilizer. Typically with my fertilizer, I like to fertilize maybe every 2 weeks with the liquid fertilizer. I'm going to slow that down on my petunias because they're doing so good. So eventually what I'm going to do is try to pot them up into like a gallon size and maybe put 3 plants in one container. That's what my eventual goal is with the petunias, but we're not quite there at this point. All right, so I was just talking about real quick about petunias that are growing straight up. You can see these 3 right here are growing straight up. So I'm actually going to go down pretty far and cut above a set of 2 leaves and force these to branch. It looks really dramatic and painful, but it actually will be really great for the plant doing this as opposed to allowing it to grow straight up. Okay, so we've gone through all the basics of your seedling maintenance or your seedling care tips, all the way from the very beginning when we take off the humidity dome for the first time to when we are starting to pot them up and pruning and getting them prepped to go outside. Now, at this point, our seedlings are getting to the point where they're going to be transitioning to go outside, and that is going to be a whole separate video from me because I feel like once you're taking them from the inside to the outside, it's a whole different ballgame. So all of my tips are just for growing inside right now or in your basement or in your garage or whatever. This is before they end up going outside into the wild of your garden. Okay, let's go ahead and hit on a few things or a few issues you might run into with your seedlings and how you can troubleshoot or diagnose what is wrong with your seedling. Okay, let's say your seeds sprouted and within a few days they literally just die and fall over. That is typically dampening off. Dampening off is basically like a fungus kind of issue, disease, bacterial, I'm not sure which, but it's something basically where the seedling is suffering from some kind of mold or something at the base of the stem, which basically kills the stem, kills the nutrients, separates the top from the root, and then makes the whole plant fall over. The best thing to combat dampening off is to make sure you remove the humidity domes as soon as possible after sprouting and to make sure you have excellent air circulation and also make sure that your seedlings are not just sitting in water. All of those things lead to a buildup of mold, algae, bacteria, the whole thing. And so making sure that we have those 3 elements going will really help prevent the dampening off process. Okay, let's say you have a beautiful seedling. It looks great one day, beautiful green, and a couple of days later, it's yellow. Like, why is it yellow? Typically, when a seedling turns yellow, it's because they're overwatered. So what you need to do is lift it out of its container, make sure the container is nice and dry inside the reservoir, the water reservoir, remove any extra standing water from it, and give the seedling a day or two to kind of not dry out totally, but give it an opportunity to become less waterlogged before you begin rewatering again. So yeah, if it turns yellow, typically it's because it's overwatered. Okay, another problem I hear people asking, they're like, I started my seedlings, it sprouted, it looks great, but it hasn't grown in weeks and months. It's so tiny and it seems stunted and it's not doing anything. That could be a couple of things. One, that could absolutely just be the nature of that particular seedling and plant. So make sure you research it, such as something like Elysianthus. You start those, they sprout, and then they sit there for weeks and weeks and weeks and don't get any bigger. Totally Elysianthus thing. I've also found that to be true with violas and pansies. They sprout and then they just hang out forever. So really look up, research what's supposed to happen with that seedling first before you go on to the other things. The other option is that it could be under fertilized. So you might need to be hitting it with the fish emulsion. I'm not saying it every day. I'm not even saying every week, maybe every 2 weeks at the most. I tend to do more like every 2 to 3 weeks is when I am fertilizing mine as well. You're fertilizing with a very diluted solution. We don't want to overwhelm our seedlings. Now, it also might be stunted because the location that you're growing your seed in is too cold. And so it's going to grow at a way slower rate than if it was in a little bit of a warmer situation. I find that my seeds grow inside pretty well because they are typically at a 68 to 72 degree temp. But if you're someone who's growing in a basement or garage, there are times and hours of the day it's going to get pretty cold in there, and the seedling is not going to be triggered with heat to grow. Instead, it's going to be consolidating all of its needs staying small so that it can survive the colder temps. Now, a lot of people ask, what's a good temperature to keep a seedling at? Typically, you want to keep them between 70 and 80 degrees. However, I know that that is not always functional for everybody depending on your location. Like I said, for all my gardeners growing in basements and in garages, you might set up a space heater to warm your area up a little bit, or you might not really be concerned with your seedlings getting really gigantic yet. Maybe you just wanted to get them all started, and maybe you want it to stay cool and you want them to stay nice and small for now. And then as you get closer to your spring, maybe you start heating up your space at that point to bring on the growth on the seedlings. And one more thing I hear people talking about seedlings is leggy seedlings. That is seedlings that have gotten really tall and thin and stretched out. That is a lighting issue. That means your seedling needs to be much closer to the lighting source. If I were to take these little seedlings right here and put them on this shelf where they're a foot away from the light, they would all get super, super tall and thin and probably not survive. So it's very important to have your seedling within a couple of inches of the light. As they grow, you can raise your light or you can lower the seedling container, whatever works best for you. But yes, that's typically the issue with long, leggy seedlings. Okay, so we went through all the care and maintenance tips for seedlings. I hope some of this helped you all out. And I hope the last few things that we hit about potential issues and problems with the seedlings, hopefully that answered a few questions as well. Now what I want to do is just give you an update on the seedlings that I have started, how it's going, whether I failed or succeeded, and what they all currently look like. Okay, so I currently have 4 trays of petunias, and they're all looking really good. I've only got I only pulled 3 out to start off with. Everybody's growing beautifully. Like I said, I am having to go in and cut off blooms or trim back and prune to make sure that they don't get too big too quickly. I am very, very happy with these seedlings. They look great. I do not think I should have started them in December. I think I should have started them towards the end of December or beginning of January. I do think I started these too early, but I had heard it took quite a while for petunias to get going. That ended up not being the case. These got going beautifully, and I haven't really had any issues with them so far. They've been really great. We are getting to the point where I'm going to need to start potting these up to the next level, and that will be a whole video that I'll show you all. Okay, and while my petunias have been a smashing success, my begonias have not. I maybe had less than 10% germination rate. I've got 4 right here in the Illumination series that did sprout and are doing well. And over here in the Mara Hybrid Ruffled Coral, I have 2. They're very hard to see, one right there, one right there. I did have another one, but it got issues with damping off. And you can see like the algae and mold starting to grow on this, which tells me that I need to take this guy out and just give him an opportunity to dry out. So I'm actually going to remove him and stick him back here for a day or so and allow it some time to process. So that was 2 varieties I started. I also have 2 more over here that have not sprouted at all. And I mean, it's been weeks and weeks at this point. So I don't think anything's going to happen. This was another container of the Illumination mix. And then the other one was the Amara Hybrid Picotee Lace Pink. And neither of them sprouted or gave me anything. So I think we're pretty much done with this. So out of 24, 48, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 out of 48. So not great on the begonia front. Okay, my next set of seeds are my dahlias that I'm growing from seeds. I'm growing pom-pom dahlias, showpiece double mixed dahlias, and double extreme dahlias. And we've had really great germination rate. These are actually getting a touch dry, so they need to be watered, and I'll do that after the video. But everybody's looking really good. These are about 2 weeks away from having to begin thinning them out a little bit, but they're looking really nice, and I'll probably hit them with fertilizer this next week to really kind of encourage their growth. But so far, I'm very happy with the results of the dahlia seeds. Okay, this next one is a mixed tray of seeds. We have one over here, which is the begonia Picotee Lace, and it's got one tiny itty bitty little begonia seed in there. or begonia plant in there. And then next to it is the begonia amara hybrid ruffled coral salmon. And I've got 2 of those. So now we're up to 50, 60, 60 let's see, 60, 72 starts. And I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 out of 70. 9 out of 70. So real low germination rate. Next to it back here, I've got my Coleus Calacha Sunset. And it looks like we had about a 50% germination rate, although there's still some additional seedlings coming up right here. Those are looking really nice. In front of it, I've got my Sparkler 2.0 Blush Cleome. And we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cells. So we only had about a 50% germination rate. However, some of them have 2 seedlings. So I can move them around if needed as they continue to grow. Right beside it, I have baby blue eucalyptus, and it looks like we had 2 not come up, but several of the other ones have multiples in them. So almost 100% germination rate. These are super sweet and they're doing great as well. Very happy with all of these, keeping them as close to the light as possible. All right, this tray has mostly coleus. Back here we've got the black dragon coleus. It looks like I had maybe 75% germination rate for it back here. Next to it, oh, did I have 2 of those? Yes, I had 2 of those. So there's one set right here, and here's another one. This was almost 100% 2 of the black dragon. Back here I'd have Wizard Velvet Red, and I would say maybe 50%. And these seeds are definitely lagging behind everyone else. They've taken a little bit longer to go. This one up here is also the Wizard Velvet Red, and I only had like 2 or 3 out of the whole container. So the Wizard Velvet Red did not have nearly as good of germination rate as the other ones. Right beside it, I have the Kong coleus, which I was very excited about. And it looks like we had almost 100% germination rate here. And then back here, we have an additional set of Coleus Calacha Sunset that I had like in the other container. And we had 100% germination rate back here. So these are all doing really, really well. Y'all told me that I would really enjoy these because once they start putting on their true sets of leaves, you actually start seeing their color. So I'm really excited to watch these coleus grow. Okay, next are my scabiosas, and it has not gone well with the scabiosas. So this Beaujolais bonnet scabiosa, I started, let's see, well, I'm trying to remember how I started these. I don't think I've had any germinate for the Beaujolais. Is that right? I can't remember how I seeded these, but yeah, I don't think I've had any on either of the packets for the Beaujolais. None of them are germinated. For the Merlot Red Scabiosa, I've only had 1 sad little seedling germinate for that one. And for the Salmon Rose Scabiosa, I've had 1, 2, 3, 4, about 50% for the Salmon Rose. This one back here has 3 in it, so I can separate out these seedlings to give me a little bit more. Pretty disappointed in the Beaujolais bonnet. Let me know if any of y'all have grown that, if you had any issues with the seedlings starting. But yeah, and it's time I really do. These seedlings are getting big, so I really need to take the humidity dome off. I might leave this one a little bit longer, but I just don't think anything's going to happen at this point. They've had more than enough time to sprout. I might put these on a heat mat for a day or 2, see if that helps out. Let me give that a try. Okay, and then the last one I had was a little bit of a different starting technique in that I basically have this, I created this dome, or this situation where I've got holes in the bottom, and I have water in the reservoir below it, and basically what I did is put humidity dome, and then I sprinkled this whole area with alyssum seeds. I have not had as many germinate as I thought, and I'm starting to have some dampening off issues where some of them are dying. So what that tells me is that they are too wet. So I'm just gonna go ahead and yeah, there's too much water down here. Pour all that water out. Give this a little bit of opportunity to drain some more. And then I think I'll open my humidity dome a little bit and see how that does. See if we can't get some more going. I might actually even leave the humidity dome off since this is so moist, but we'll give it a try and see what happens. Okay, so feeling very good about the seedlings. I definitely have had some failures along the way. I knew begonias was going to be tough. I didn't know it was going to be that hard. So it's all right. Lesson learned. We're working on it. I wanted to try it out and see what happens. I did get some, and hopefully I can grow those on and they'll be good to go. But I hope you enjoyed hearing all the care tips for seedlings. It's something I feel like we miss quite frequently, like how to take care of them from the point that they sprout till they go outside. That in-between point is actually very important to the quality and strength of the seedling that you'll be putting out in your garden. And I hope you enjoyed seeing the update of all of my seedlings and how they're doing as well. Give me an update on your seedlings. Have you had failures? Have you had successes? Do you have questions? Is there other things that we as gardeners can help you out with regarding your seed starting? Just let us know and drop a comment below. All right, y'all. As always, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Every time you guys like and comment, it helps out. Even if you don't want to comment, just put a little heart emoji and give me a little love. That'll help out wonderfully. And make sure you check me out on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook as well. As always, she's a mad gardener or decorator or anything else that she wants to be. Thanks, y'all.